Teams. All right. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healthy for My Purpose. Today, we are talking about rhythms of grace, creating routines for lasting health. So, we're going to talk about all things routine. Um, why routines are important, how routines can be um, a foundation to kind of help you live out your health goals with consistency, some of the pitfalls that we can find ourselves in with the idea of routines. We're just going to talk about all things routine. So, if you are someone that is listening that's like, you know what, I really need to rein in my schedule, I find it's all over the place, or maybe I need to tweak it, or let's just have this discussion. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And, I want to also just say when we talk about routines today, we're talking about it in the context of,
Your
I
health
guess,
journey. Yeah.
yeah, health, like, exercise,
Mhm.
food, all of that. So anything kind of health related is what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I guess we should maybe start with talking about our own routines, or how do you want to kick this off,
Yeah.
Stacey?
I've been really trying to hone, over the last couple of months, I've been really trying to hone my routine in terms of um, giving it a little more structure with times, because I think I had routines where I'll be like, okay, get all of this done today. But I think I'm really leaning more into really writing out, like I would have the time that I go to the gym, that would be a little more obvious. But I want to, like, even what time are you going to meal prep? What time are you getting to bed? Like, I kind of want to really bolster a lot more with specifics, being a little more specific.
Mhm.
So my routines have really evolved in that way, where I was doing more like I would have some things that would have times, and then a lot of things would just be, okay, just get it done throughout that day.
Yeah.
And I'm finding now that I really want to lean more into actually penciling in the times,
Mhm.
even the times where it's, take your break time, or, I really just want to kind of master my day a little bit more. And I'm thinking
Mhm.
that adding more time, specific times, might bolster that instead of giving it that much flexibility. So that's where I'm at with my routine. But it
Yeah.
started off with just giving some. But I think as I feel like routines are almost like going to the gym. When you go to the gym and you start off with 10 pounds, and then all of a sudden you get immune to it and you move up to 20. I feel like routine sometimes, when you feel like it's not serving you the same way, and it's, I feel like you could upgrade, and I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to upgrade it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think routines can go, like, it's kind of a continuum is the way I look at it. Like, you can have super flexible to super rigid, and then there's
Right.
like the sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think with routines, it's it can also change with seasons, like, with
Yeah.
where you're at in your life. I
Yes.
mean, I think about where I'm at in my life right now versus where I was at in my life in my kind of mid to late 40s, when I was
Mm.
doing a lot of heavy cycling and, really just focused on, racing and all of that.
Training for something specifically.
Training, yeah, because, I mean, I would, my training schedule, I was cycling about almost probably about 20 hours a week, some weeks,
Yeah.
because the races that I would compete in would be a lot of long distance races, century rides,
Yeah.
100-mile bike rides, and even more.
Mhm.
And so, like, I'll never forget, and I think I've shared this with you before, when I did my first bike race. It was actually a 200-mile race in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Wow.
And it was part of the Race Across America kind of, organization who puts on that, Race Across the West, Race Across America. Well, they have these like challenges all around the country. They have 200-mile, 400
Mhm.
mile, like different long distance challenges. So
Yeah.
my first race, like my first bike race, was a time trial. It was a 200 miler in
Mm,
Florida. And as I was training for that, I was on the bike a lot, as you can imagine.
yeah. So that's going to
And
affect what your routine
it's
looks
going
like.
to affect my routine. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to affect because I was, working at a 9 to 5 job at the time. And Kevin kind of came into it like we were commuting between two different cities at the time when I started this. And
Mhm.
then he had moved back home kind of full time and in the middle of my training. And he never said anything. Like he never said like, why are you on the bike so long or anything? Like he never like said it. He just knew I would be gone for like 6 hours on a Saturday, right?
Going on.
I'd be like, okay, honey, I'm gonna be gone, from 7 a.m. I'll see you sometime around 1 or 2 or something in the afternoon. And he'd be like, what are you doing like that
What
long?
kind of bike riding is this? I mean, was he familiar with this endurance at the time, or
Yeah,
he just
he didn't know, but he knew I was enjoying it and he was
yeah,
being supportive. And so that was kind of my routine at the time. But I will say that when I did that race in Florida, because he and my
right, I
sister were
remember this. He
my
saw the
support
work
group.
into it. Now he's like, spend 10 hours because you really
He,
need it.
Yeah, I mean, he was so blown away by my ability to complete that race. Not only
Yeah.
complete it, but I won it. And he was like, "Now I understand why you're on the
Why
bike
you're
6
out there so
hours.
long because
Now I get it." Yeah,
because
yeah,
you have to be doing. Yeah.
yeah.
So I love that
Whereas,
you said that because it's like the routine, there's seasons of life. You have to be willing to adjust your routine to the seasons of your life. Like,
right,
I guess that's what you're saying. Because when
yeah,
you are in your peak of racing, your schedule will look totally different from when you're on off season
right.
or the case may be. Yeah.
Or like even like this season of my life
Yeah.
where I'm not doing as much racing. I've done some virtual races this past year, but
On
not
that.
done like
Yeah.
any hardcore races in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so my cycling volume is down significantly from where it was at. But if I decide to do another race, long distance type thing,
You may
then it
adjust.
will my routine will definitely change. It'll be
Yeah, and
more
season of life. And I mean, it's odd. I mean, now that you say that, it's like, oh, of course, it's even the same thing. Like, I think about it, now that Kelsey's 11 years old, our
Mhm.
routine looks totally different than when she was a little toddler, a
Yeah,
little baby. You know what I mean? And so it's always changing.
yeah,
And and it's like a fluid thing. I get what you're saying. It's a fluid thing that just to the
right,
life. Yeah.
right. But I will say though that regardless of the season,
Some things have to remain the same.
yeah, I mean, you still
Yeah.
need to move your body. You
That's
still
it.
need to eat right. You still need to, you still need to do all the things. Like I am still cycling. I'm still
But
strength
how you do it, when you
how
do
I
it,
do
how much
it.
you do it,
Right.
that will change. But and I think this is the danger that we do, because I've heard people say, well, I'm in a tough season right now, so I'm no longer exercising or eating well. No, but I think that's where we can do a disservice to the power of
Right.
routine,
Right.
where we don't tweak how we do the thing. We literally just remove it altogether. And I
Right.
don't get me wrong. There's times where in certain like acute crisis, you may have to dash off somewhere and nothing gets, I'm not talking about that type of thing, but there's sometimes we have long seasons of certain things in our lives and we literally just throw everything out.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like as we're talking about routines, you can shift seasons and still keep your foundation
Right.
by tweaking, like you said, how well, maybe I'm not going to be out 6 hours on a
Right.
Saturday, but I
Right.
might just be out for an hour.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? And so it's about really just knowing what are my core values, what are my non-negotiables for my routine. I
Right.
think I think when we're building our routines, we have to kind of start off with what is my non-negotiables? Exercise,
Mhm. Yep.
like you said, eating well, the meal prep, maybe it's your morning routine, prayer time. What are your non-negotiables? And
Mhm.
kind of build those in as the roadblocks or the foundation and then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, when we look at those two extremes, like we can probably, we should talk about the example we talked about earlier, before we recorded this. We were saying on one extreme, you're talking about this lady that
Or the
you ran.
rigid versus, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's so rigid. She's at the gym no matter what.
Mhm.
Her husband's having some kind of an event, there's some important thing going on, but she's like, no, I can't go to it. I can't support him because I have to get on this elliptical and work out. Which honestly, I've never met someone like that. I do know of people, I will say, I
Mhm.
know of people who have actually gotten divorces
Over
because
their routines.
well, it's because they're on different paths. Like you have one person who's like doing a lot of Ironman triathlons,
Mm.
and these are 20-hour 25-hour training weeks,
Mm.
swimming, biking, and running, and these are long distances of all
Right.
three sports. And so if you have a spouse or a partner who's like used to you always being there for dinner or being there for breakfast,
Cause a
or
disruption. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. How
that,
routine.
yeah, I mean, people have literally gotten separated and divorced over this. And so there's that piece as well, because I think that that's the scenario. You've got two different people on two different paths, like, yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast episode probably. But I feel like that we are, in this place of, understanding where we are in the continuum, and then making sure that we're not so far in the end where, we started something healthy, something
Mhm.
happened, and then it threw us off our game. So we just kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and said, forget it. Or on the other extreme of someone's just like, hey, you know, um, my 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 niece is getting baptized, but I can't go because I have to do an hour on the elliptical.
Yeah, yeah,
That's like
yeah.
the
And
other.
it's not usually as dark as that, but it's just this, like, and some people, their social life, all the things that they used to do. I don't want to get too much on that woman there, but I'm just saying, it's like routines are meant to, I think, provide the structure you need to accomplish what you're trying to live out. They're not meant to trap you, or to, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not meant, it's more meant for freedom. It's not meant for rigidity and bondage. Like, if you feel like, I can't move to the left and I can't move to the right because I wrote it in this routine, then to me that doesn't feel like freedom to me. That feels like I'm a slave to the routine, when in essence,
Yeah.
the routine to me is actually giving me the freedom, because it's helping me structure all of the things that I want to accomplish. So it's a tool for me, a
Well,
tool that
yeah,
can be tweaked.
but I would say too that it depends on the self-talk you're having about it.
Mm.
Because if you're saying, you know, as far as this rigidity thing, but the excuse that you're making is, something that really is more of an excuse than
Yeah.
you know what I mean, than like a reason to deviate. So, for example, there are situations where, someone will say to me, yeah, I was gonna work out, but my daughter got sick, and so she was, in the bed, and getting some rest. She had to, she was sick, she was under the
Yeah.
weather, so I didn't work out. But I'm like, but all your workout equipment's at home, so why did you work out?
Yeah.
I mean, were you like holding your daughter over the toilet while she was vomiting? I get that, but all
Yeah.
night. But what did she have, like more of a crusty booger situation where she just needed to sleep it off, and you were basically just watching TV. So you have to be honest with yourself about the validity of the reason that
Right.
it has
Right.
to be like a legit. You have to be
Yeah.
honest.
And routines are there to hold us accountable, but
Hold
only
us
you
accountable. Yeah.
can be honest with how you use that routine, right? Like
Right.
if you legitimately know that, like you said, I could probably just, instead of, I had to take her to the doctor, I would have normally exercised at 10 a.m. But you know what? When I get home and I put her to bed, I probably can do it 7 o'clock. Like you have to kind of, that routine is there to guide you and to show you that, listen, you have it on your schedule. Will you hold yourself accountable to it?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you
But
can't,
going, yeah. But there was a point I started to
mhm,
make and I got distracted. But
mhm,
the freedom piece, when you say there's more that, giving yourself some freedom,
mhm.
that's where, that freedom piece can become a slippery slope depending on the self-talk that you have around what that quote unquote reason is. That's the point I wanted to loop it
Yeah,
back to,
okay, right,
because,
right.
you could say it gives me more freedom,
Yeah,
which is what you want, but you also have to be honest. Is this just a lame excuse I'm giving because I really don't want to work out?
yeah.
Or is it, you have to like really like critique that voice in your head around why, you're sticking with something or not sticking with something.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And when I think of, when I'm saying the word freedom, I'm seeing it more as boundaries and routine actually are seen maybe as restrictive, but actually I think it's freedom, and I'm using that in a loose word because it's actually helping me to stay on track. So that when
Yeah.
I say freedom, I mean it from the perspective of
Long-term health freedom.
long-term health freedom. Like it's
Yeah.
actually freedom because it's actually keeping you in line. It's giving you in a boundary so that
Mhm.
you can stay the course consistently. So that's more freedom than you're looking at it as perhaps, oh, I'm bound to the schedule. It's not freedom, but in
Mhm.
actuality it is, because it's bringing you to the goal. What's
Right.
not freedom is the willy-nilly. It looks free. That looks free on the outside, but that's a bondage because
Right.
you have no boundaries, you have no structure, you
Yep.
have no path. So what looks like freedom is actually bondage, and what the routine may look and feel at first. Because I know
Mhm.
that when I started to really get into, with my health, and really, at first, it may feel a little bit like, oh my goodness, I got to get up and, but that's actually was the freedom that I was gaining. That once you yield yourself to it, you
Mm.
realize that, wait a minute, I don't have to do this routine like you always say, Juju. I'm deciding to do it. So
Right.
this is freedom in the structure that I'm committing to myself to do. You know what
Right.
I mean? So
Right.
yeah,
Because there's a benefit or an outcome as a
there's a
result of
benefit and there's an
that you.
outcome
Right.
that's actually
Right.
holding you accountable to
Lower
accomplish.
blood pressure, maintaining a healthy weight, keeping, all those things that,
All those things that you're
yeah,
penciling in, that's actually guiding you. And then when you don't pencil it in and you're just shooting from the hip, you're actually moving away from your goals.
yeah,
So you're walking in the opposite direction of the
right.
freedom.
On the surface, it looks like freedom,
It's, oh yeah, because I do what I
but it's
want.
not.
I'll just wake up in the morning and figure it out.
It's not
You know,
freedom.
and how many times do we try to figure things out? It's like the meal prepping. We talk about
Yeah.
this a lot. A lot of times you're just like, I'll figure it out. Well, that figuring out sometimes ends up in the wrong
At,
place.
at Chick-fil-A.
Or eating some crazy snacks you shouldn't be eating, or going to, you know what I mean? Because you didn't plan,
Right.
right? And so I think routines are the ultimate prep, day
Yeah.
prep, that
Yeah.
you could do for your life. Because and I think you become on autopilot, because after a while, when you start living out your routine, it's almost like we talk about this when we talk about our palate, but it's almost like you crave to do the thing because your body's just so used to it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if you ever feel that, Gigi, but I know, like, for
Yeah.
me, it's like I'm when I don't do it, I feel a little bit like imbalanced. Like,
Right. Totally. For sure. Yeah. Like
if
when I've had some of my injuries, that's been the hardest mental part is
mm,
not being able to do what I would normally do. And then, but that's where you have to shift gears and figure out what you can do and when you can do it. But we should dissect the difference between a healthy routine versus a legalistic kind of
rigid,
rigid rule.
yeah.
And I'm going to say something that is probably going to shock some people. I don't know if it'll shock some people, but
Well, we're on the edge of our seats now, Gigi.
yeah. But I'll say, like, one of the legalistic rigid rules that I hear more often than not is, and people are gonna agree with me, I'm too tired to work out.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
Tell you more. Yeah.
Considered legalistic? Is that what you're saying?
It's a legalistic, because what it is it's a legalistic rule in your, it's a limiting belief that is
Okay.
that is in essence a legalistic rule that you will act upon, or in this case not act upon, as it relates to working out. So you say, oh, I worked all day, I'm too tired to work out. And it becomes the repetitive routine nature with which that becomes habitual in your life. I would say that is a legalistic rigid rule, because somehow in your brain you associated with being tired and not working out as the outcome. Whereas why can't you be tired and work out? Like why is it that like,
yeah.
Yeah, it is, because the reality is that when you do challenge yourself, push yourself to go work out, that tiredness literally goes away.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden it resolves that symptom.
Yeah.
And so, I say it's legalistic and rigid because it's so used habitually in a lot of people, a lot of times, like literally every day, that they end up never working out, at least not on a weekday when they're working. And so, I see that. Yeah, I see that way more than I see, some random person on the elliptical for an hour missing, some important family event.
Yeah. And I think also too, with the rigidity versus a healthy routine, I think that's how you said it, is also understanding that routines are not fixed, in the sense that sometimes there will be hiccups. Sometimes life happens, you made a mistake, you ate something you shouldn't have, or you were running to you were supposed to go to a workout class, you got there late, you missed, I don't know, whatever happens, that you don't fulfill what you were supposed to do. And some people, this is where the legalism or the rigidness comes in. Well, I made the mistake, I messed up, so the whole day's done.
Right.
Or I'm giving up now, because you are saying, unless I do it perfect, it's not worth being done. And that's when you have an unhealthy view of what routines are. Routines are not meant to be to the letter, that if you have to do it exactly the way it is, and if you don't, then the whole thing is nullified. That's where you get into the the rigidness of it, because you're making this into a perfected thing and not a guidance as a structure and a boundary that you're using as a tool to accomplish your goals. And some people throw the baby out with the bathwater. If I don't do my routine the exact way it should be done, then that's it. I can't do it. Or now the whole thing is blown up. And I think we have to be a lot more flexible. We have to say, well, I didn't do it right now, but I'm just going to move on to the next thing on the agenda and just keep it moving,
Yep. Yeah. So let's bring up a scripture, Cersei. We want to tie it back to the word here. So 1 Corinthians 14:40 says, but everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. What are your thoughts on that one, Cersei? Like, how does that relate to
I think routine, we need routines.
Yeah.
I think routines bring order, it brings structure, it brings accountability, it brings intentionality to our lives. I think we thrive in routine. And I think by saying, but everything should be done in fitting in an orderly way, it kind of speaks to that, because it brings in order. It takes all of the things that we have to do and helping us to prioritize them, to plug them in, to kind of structure it in a way that is actually doable. Because I don't know if anybody's ever felt like when they've been off a routine, and I know I've been there, where I don't have a routine. And let me tell you, when I don't have a routine, everything's all over the place. Like
Yeah.
less, put it this way, less gets done. I'm not saying nothing
Right.
gets, but less gets done. You know what I mean? When you
Yeah.
fall out of the routine. And I think routine is just there to guide us, to help us prioritize what is it that I want to accomplish and plug it in. It's
Yeah.
intentional, you know?
Yeah. So the takeaway is really, it's not perfection, and perfection, or it's not pure imperfection.
Right?
I don't know. It's more consistency and grace.
That's
You
it.
know,
Consistency and
something is, it's kind of like something is always better than nothing, right?
right.
You have a routine, you do the best you can to stick with it as it makes sense, with honest assessment of excuses for why you might miss.
Yeah.
Like being honest with yourself around it, and giving yourself grace, you
When
know,
things don't work out as
when
perfectly.
things
Right.
don't go work out as perfectly or as much as you'd like them to.
Exactly.
But the beauty of everything that we're talking about is, if we're talking about a meal, we're talking about the next meal, hitting the reset button and starting with the next
That's the
meal.
thing. There's always a reset button on
Yeah,
routine. What didn't happen yesterday could happen today.
yeah,
What
yeah.
didn't
Or
happen
even
in the morning could happen in the evening.
could happen in the
What happen in
evening.
the morning could happen at lunchtime.
Right.
So we have to see it as a fluid, like you said, it's fluid and
Uh-huh.
it's ongoing, and it's more about the consistency than it is about mastery, 100% mastery or perfection. Maybe perfection is a better word, because mastery
Yeah.
is good, but perfection.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what do you want to cover next, Cersei?
Um, we could talk about, let's see, we could talk about, the, the small habits,
Mhm.
a lot of times, when we're creating routines, sometimes we may want to just do everything at once. But I
Mhm.
think there's power in saying, you know what? Let me just plug in a few things that I could hold myself to. And I'm going to get up, I'm going to work out for 30 minutes. I'm going to eat a healthy breakfast. I'm just, starting off small. And
Mhm.
I might do that for 2 weeks, and then I might build on that.
Mhm.
And I might add more things. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, in the sense
Mhm.
that you could start off with small, tiny, intentional habits that you plug into a routine, and then you could build from there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, the routine doesn't have to be, and I think routines evolve. Like I said, you could start off with, okay, I'm just exercising every morning. And a lot of times when we talk with the people in the 4-week program that we have, a lot of their routine starts around the food,
Yeah.
and they don't add anything else in there. They're just focusing on, how can I create routine around how I eat, what I cook, and then
Mhm.
they start to layer it from there. And then they start to add in, well, what about moving my body?
Right.
What about, and so you could layer it, and you could start off with one thing and then add another thing. And before you know it, you've created this robust routine that is really pushing you towards your goals.
Yeah, yeah, and you end up, you look back, you're surprised at what a big change you've made just as a result of those small incremental habits. I love
Right.
small habits because they're bite-sized, they're
Mhm.
tangible, they're doable, it's not
It's
overwhelming.
an instant win.
Yeah, it's
When
an
you have a
instant
win,
win.
that feeling of that win fuels you for the next one and the
Yep,
next one. And if
and
you
it
have
just
to
keeps
wait
going.
so long for a win, it could be discouraging, but small habits give you quick wins too.
Right. It also helps you to create discipline, because we know the difference between motivation and discipline. You know,
Mm,
you some motivation can be very fleeting.
mhm,
And whereas if you create the discipline of
mhm,
doing it, this is what you're used to, then even when you don't feel like do it, you still end up doing it anyway because you're just used to doing it. It's like
mm,
creating that muscle memory around it. But there is a scripture here. I'll go ahead and pull up. I think it's is it Proverbs 21:5 here. The
mm,
plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty.
mm.
So when I read that, it does come to mind this whole concept around discipline versus motivation. Motivation, you might have it it can be very fleeting sometimes, and then
Mm,
some other shiny object distracts your attention and you're no longer motivated.
mhm,
Whereas the diligent to me is another. it's kind of like what comes to mind is discipline, creating that habit, the small habits, the diligence around, um, whatever it is that you're changing in your life, and creating that muscle memory.
Yeah, and it's like the plans. When I see that, I see the plans.
Yeah.
That means I see routine is a plan.
Yep.
When we create plans, you never sometimes you never know how plans will unfold, but when you create a plan, it's intentional.
Mhm.
You're saying you're deciding what you want to happen in that day and then executing it, rather than when you're just living by haste, you're just shooting from the hip.
Mhm.
Like, okay, what am I going to do now? And it's just fast thinking. There's no thought put in it. There's no plan. It's
Mhm.
just whatever I think in the moment, I'm just going to do it in real time. And so that's what unstructured life looks like sometimes, is that we kind of just do things by shoot from the hip. We're in haste. We're always in a rush. We don't know what's coming next, and things like that.
Yeah. So the takeaway from this was really just start small,
Hmm.
create those small habits. Just pick one. I mean, if you're starting from scratch and even going to the gym for a day is too much, like Cersei, like you said, Cersei, it should be, start with breakfast, just start with breakfast. Every morning I'm going to have a bowl of oatmeal with some fruit and, some nuts, and drink a big glass of water. That's it. I'm just going to start with breakfast. And then you just kind of create that muscle memory of, this is what I'm doing now. It always feels uncomfortable at first when you're starting a new habit. But, the more you stick with it, the more you actually tend to like it, get used to it, and you miss it when you don't do it.
Yeah. All right. I love the next topic here is anchors to your day. So, what are anchors? Anchors are predictable habits that reset your day spiritually, emotionally, and physically, right? They don't have to be something that's long. They just need to be something that's intentional, that reminds us to realign with our goals, with our health goals, right?
Mhm.
And so, you could kind of break them up in the morning. We could talk about what our anchors are, Gigi, if you want to. But there
Mhm.
could be like a morning anchor, there could be a midday anchor, there could be an evening anchor. Like for example, a 10-minute devotional, having your smoothie in the morning, saying a gratitude. Those could be stuff that, are like your morning ritual, so to speak, or anchor that you could just, when I do this, it's going to kind of reset the tone for the day for me to realign with what I got to do.
Mhm.
For midday, it might even be going for a walk. It might be stop, maybe doing a midday prayer. It might be saying, you know what, let me unpack my lunch. I don't know, whatever it is, the reset, but it's just those little markers that trigger you to kind of realign. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I think for me, my morning anchor will definitely be, um, in terms of the health, I think it's like working out. Like if
Mhm.
I don't work out, it's like in the morning, I'm a little bit off. Like sometimes I have to work out in the evening because, like we said, things happen. You can't always do it
Mhm.
in the morning.
Mhm.
But that always sets my day to start the day right if I start off with the exercise. So that's like a morning anchor that I would say for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say my morning anchors are, even before I get out of the bed, I I say some gratitude prayers. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still in the bed, like I haven't even put my foot on the ground yet.
Yeah.
That can set the stage for my day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, I tend to be a better thinker earlier in the morning. So I used to work out in the morning. Sometimes I still do. It just depends, if I've got plans or something. But I tend to get a lot of my focused work done early in the morning, after I get up, and then usually I'll do like a mid afternoon. I'll do a workout, and then I also get some really good focused work done in the evening, to a point. um, but yeah, and then as far as the food goes, it's the meal prepping that we do. It's just always having, the only choice in the house is a healthy choice. So you can't, like, you can't go into my refrigerator and find something that's terribly unhealthy. Like, it's just not there because we don't bring it in the house. But so it's just the food part of it is pretty straightforward. I think the exercise can vary depending on my schedule and what's going on, but the anchor is really just that gratitude prayer first thing in the morning before I put my foot on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important to kind of figure out what are some triggers that can just let me know that I immediately need to realign and get in tune with my routine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if you
Yeah.
had an off morning, what's your noon anchor?
Hmm.
What's your evening anchor that could kind of reset you? Maybe it's, making a smoothie, whatever, but just
Yeah.
what is it that kind of anchors you, that kind of reminds you like, okay, I got to get back on track here. Or
Yeah. And I do, there are days when it's not, I'm not in a position to do the workout I have in my schedule for one reason or another. And
Mhm.
so it is a scenario of something is better than nothing. So I do part of the workout, maybe not all of the workout.
Mhm.
So, that is another way of, I think resetting in a sense of, not swaying to I'm just not going to do anything to I'm going to
Moving
do
your body, period, is an
moving
anchor.
your body is an anchor. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Do we want to pull up this verse here, Cersei?
Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And this is just a reminder that you might have days that you're just like, what happened today? You know what I mean? Like this day, like I didn't stick on the routine the way I would have loved to. Everything that could have went wrong. But here's the good news. Sometimes we get derailed by that and we end up walking away from our routines when we have really bad days. But there's a new day. You could start fresh. Like, and I think
Hmm.
that's where, speaks to this idea that every day you open your eyes, it's a gratefulness that I got a new fresh start. I got a fresh start given
Hmm.
to us by God, that I could choose to take it or not take it, but there is a new morning.
Hmm.
There is a new day. And we could walk in and say, you know what, yesterday I can't control what happened to that day, but I can now move forward in a new day. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So, yeah. So I think just to recap, kind of the main points here. First is grace over perfection. So not having that all or nothing, swing the pendulum to one side or the other. The second is small habits build big wins. The third is anchor your day in God's presence. So what do we want the listeners to do, Cersei?
Yeah, so I guess it's just to take a look at your routine. First of all, do you even have a routine when it comes to your health? Right? Because let's face it, some people have routines around their jobs, they have routines around family life. Like, I got to pick up the kids at 4. I got to do this, I got to cook dinner. But do you have a health routine that
Hmm.
that you have around ensuring that you remain healthy, that you are doing the things that you need to do to reach your health goals? Do you have a health routine? And if
Hmm.
you don't, now is a great time to make one, right? Where can you plug the exercise in? Where can you plug the meal prepping in? Where can you plug in your rest time? Where can you plug in, all of the things that add up to having long-term healthy living? So,
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. Well, I guess that's it for today. Another episode of Healthy for My Purpose podcast. Yeah, so this is sponsored by the Weight Loss Masterclass, which the link is provided in the description of the video. And if you are looking for some support in that space, go ahead and click on that link, sign up. It's totally free.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we also have lots of delicious, healthy recipes on danielsplate.com.
Yeah, and follow us at Healthy for My Purpose on all platforms. Yeah, have a great day.
Bye.